Welcome to the Fearless Project podcast. I'm your host, Dominique Hoffman, and this week we are joined again by our research fellow and now our new Charles Malik Institute director here at the Fearless Project, Farhad Razai. Welcome, Farhad, and congratulations on your promotion to director of CMI.
Thank you very much, Dominic.
So this week, I want to look at where we're at in terms of a ceasefire and how the religious elements of the war color what is happening in the region and what's likely to happen on March 10th, which is the start of Ramadan. The conflict, while many people might argue is not religious, is deeply colored in religion. So October 7th was a religious Jewish holiday, Shemini Akhtaret. It was also Shabbat, and it was also the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War. So October 7th was picked, not by random, intentionally for the significant religious importance it has to the Jewish faith. And so now with the approach to Ramadan, we're seeing this as a flashpoint in the war between Israel and Hamas. And we're seeing how Hamas is using religious symbols such as the Al-Aqsa Mosque to incite violence and to bring the conflict, what's happening in Gaza, into Israel proper and the old city of Jerusalem. At least that's their aims. So really quickly, I want to review what a ceasefire would potentially look like. So a little over a month and a half ago, Hamas proposed a ceasefire, which would require Israel to withdraw from Gaza over a 4.5-month period, and the hostages would be released along different points of this withdrawal. They also demanded that 1,500 Palestinian prisoners be released, 500 of which are serving life sentences. And they also demanded that Israel fund and rebuild Gaza post-war and these urban centers, which have seen a lot of urban warfare. And that's a hard non-starter for Israel. They will not agree to a permanent ceasefire, and they will not agree to any sort of outcome which Hamas remains in power in Gaza. Even Egypt proposed a ceasefire solution that would require Hamas to withdraw from power in Gaza. But Hamas is more interested in maintaining and preserving their survival and their power in Gaza. And so they've rejected Israel's ceasefire proposal, which was for a temporary ceasefire, the return of all the hostages, and Israel would not continue with the Rafah offensive starting on March 10th. So they would essentially give Gaza a break for a month over the season of Ramadan. And since then, Hamas political leaders have called for a march on Al-Aqsa at the start of Ramadan. So it's a call to violence, to bring violence into Israel proper, as I mentioned at the top of the episode. And so now Israel is left with this security concern, but also the delicacy of this all occurring around the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. So Farhad, help us understand this. Why is Ramadan important? How will this affect the war? Maybe we can start with what is Ramadan and why is this holy season so important to Muslims?
Well, Ramadan is it's considered the holiest month of the year by Muslims, which is marked by fasting for the whole month. Muslims believe it was during this month that God revealed the first verses of Quran. That's the Islam's most sacred text to Muhammad. On a night that is known as the Laylat al-Qadr, or the night of power. So during this month, Muslims are encouraged to read the Quran, to engage in prayers, and also to perform good deeds. It's supposed to be a time for getting closer to faith, but unfortunately, Islamist groups like the Islamic States, also known as ISIS, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in Iran, the IRGC, and its Quds Force, Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and also Al-Qaeda, they decide to take a totally different path and of course a harmful path. They do not respect this Islamic instruction, and they engage in violence against non-Muslims, and they basically carry out terror operations during Ramadan.
So they radicalize what should otherwise be a peaceful and holy month. Um, can you explain to us why Al-Aqsa, and for some context, Al-Aqsa, the Dome of the Rock, sits on top of the Temple Mount. So the temple is the holiest site in Judaism, and Al-Aqsa, the Temple Mount, Dome of the Rock, is the third most holy site in Islam after Mecca, Medina, and Saudi Arabia. So why has Al-Aqsa been a historic flashpoint for tensions between Israelis and Palestinians?
Well, this is a flashpoint because Palestinians of the West Bank go to the Al-Aqsa Mosque to celebrate on Ramadan. Uh, there is no particular religious imperative to focus on Al-Aqsa, but basically Hamas adopted the Islamic Republic's position that liberation of Jerusalem is imperative not only for Palestinians, but for the entire Muslim states, also known as Muslim Ummah. And the unity of frowns, the strategy that Iran has adopted to encircle the state of Israel, was basically zeroed without focusing on Al-Aqsa because it's a point of friction. And that's why the October 7th attack by Hamas on Israel, which resulted in the killing of over 1,200 innocent people on October 7th, was called Al-Aqsa Flood. That was for the same reason.
Mm. And you mentioned the Ayatollah's regime. So how has the Ayatollah's regime tried to reposition Jerusalem as a key religious site to undermine Saudi Arabia's claims to Mecca and Medina? Why is it significant for the regime's vision of the region at large?
Well, first of all, this was the theological innovation of Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, the founding father of the Islamic regime in Iran in 1979. He said that liberating Jerusalem from the Zionist enemy and its return to the Muslim hands was a precondition for completing the Islamist revolution in Iran and the return of Mahdi, the Shiite 12th Imam. So the obsessive focus on Jerusalem had also another reason, and that was to undermine the Saudi Arabia's claim over Mecca and Medina, two of the most important places for Muslims. Sunni Saudis were the main rival of Shia Khomeinis in Iran, and since Saudis were already the custodians of Mecca and Medina, Khomeini tried to focus on Jerusalem and he declared that Muslim shrines of Jerusalem, Al-Aqsa, to be of equal value to Mecca and Medina, and he essentially appointed Iran as its custodian. So to carry out this mission, the Islamic regime in Iran under Khomeini adopted the most radical anti-Israeli or anti-Zionist position in the Muslim world in the Middle East, and basically started to practice redemptive anti-Semitism, which is a dangerous form of anti-Semitism that basically considers the physical annihilation of the state of Israel from the face of the earth. So it's for this reason that the regime in Iran has been trying to encircle Israel from all fronts and to gain a strong influence in neighboring countries, for example, in Lebanon, in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen, in the West Bank, and also in the Gaza Strip. In Lebanon and Gaza Strip, we know that Hezbollah, Hamas, and Palestinian Islamic Jihad have basically morphed into radical sub-state actors, and they are virtually able to control their territories. and to use those territories to attack Israel.
So to summarize, to make sure I'm understanding, the Ayatollah's regime has now radicalized Al-Aqsa for both eschatological reasons to fit into their
Exactly.
ideology, and also
That's
to
true.
rival Saudi Arabia, who is their regional rival. So it not only serves the purpose of being anti-Semitic and anti-Israel, but also it fits into this Saudi Arabia proxy war.
That's correct.
And so how has Hamas used Al-Aqsa to propagate the Palestinian question and incite violence against Israel? Because this is both eschatological and religious, but it's also political. So has Al-Aqsa become a symbol of Palestinian nationalism?
Well, Hamas is an Islamist movement, and they adopted the teaching of Ayatollah Khomeini, the founder of Islamic Revolution in Iran, in which it states that the liberation of Jerusalem from the Jews is the key imperative for the entire Muslim Ummah. Hamas adopted this eschatology. When Hamas adopted its own charter, it says essentially this is their God ordained mission to liberate Jerusalem. In fact, not just Jerusalem, but every inch of Israel. Remember the chant, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. That means Israel has no right to exist. And every single inch of Israel should be liberated from the Jews and should be returned to the Muslims. After Qasem Soleimani, the former commander of the Revolutionary Guard Quds Force, was eliminated in 2020, his successor, Ismail Qani, decided that he has to create a new format to fight Israel. In the past, once in a while, as we know, Hamas missiled Israel, rocketed Israel, and Israel responded, right? And intercepted most of the rockets with its Iron Dome, with its powerful Iron Dome. And then things went back to normal after a round of exchanging fire. But Ismail Qani, the new commander of the Quds Force, thought that this is not the way to proceed, because this is just perpetuating the status quo. So he decided to heat up the area by creating what is known as the Unity of France, meaning that he wanted to create a whole new framework of resistance to Israel by mobilizing the West Bank with the special focus on Al-Aqsa, with a special focus on Jerusalem. And that basically started right after the elimination of Qasem Soleimani. Immediately after that, Qani got in touch with leaders of Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad and told them to focus all their attention on Jerusalem and on Al-Aqsa Mosque. This was also considered to be a good point to mobilize Israeli Arabs, who up to that point did not participate in riots that much. So the first effort to work on this scenario, to work on this project, was I think in May 2021, the time that Ramadan overlapped with Jerusalem Day celebration, that Israelis go around and celebrate the victory of 1967. That triggered the riots in Temple Mount, and we know that Israel responded with Operation Guardians of the Wall, and this was the first time that Israeli Arabs participated in riots. And that basically pleased Iran a lot because they were desperate to include Israeli Arabs in the Unity of France. So I think we should expect the same kind of things in this coming Ramadan, and they will try to exploit the situation to make chaos.
And to bring the fight outside of Gaza into Israel
Exactly.
proper, which is a security threat to Israel. And also, as we close, just to remind the audience, the Palestinians who will be coming into Israel, the hundreds of thousands who will go to the Old City to worship during Ramadan, will be coming from the West Bank, which has now been very much radicalized since the start of the war on October 7th. So we'll continue to follow this story as it will no doubt progress. And as you said, Farhad, will most likely see riots of a similar nature to 2021, if not greater on a larger scale. So thank you for joining us today, Farhad, and I'll see everyone next week.
Thank you very much for having me, Dominic.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.